into the rotation field that the force arrow is being applied directly to the front of the character's head. Now we can left click in the viewport just to remove the display of those handles. Now let's go down to the simulate button and click simulate and watch what happens in the viewport now. We can see that the character is being pushed backwards, not just dropping like a rag doll as he did before. So let's return to the beginning and play that animation a few times. You can see that the animation loops. Underneath the timeline here we have a grey bar called the loop range, and we can shorten that to shorten the loop played range. We can move it about to change the section of the animation that's being played. Let's return that to the whole of our simulation. So we've changed the animation by applying a force event to this character. But at the moment it's quite a violent push and we want to reduce the strength of that push. So again we can select the force event and move over to its property view, and there's a value here called strength which is currently set to 12. If we reduce that down to, let's say, 3, we're reducing the size of the force that's being applied to the character, and in fact you'll see that the force arrow reduces considerably in size. Now if we play the simulate again, you can see that there's a very small push being given to the character, just to push him backwards a little. But again, the animation isn't particularly exciting. So what we're going to do now is apply a behaviour event to this character, and we're going to use a stagger behaviour. So let's remove the animation. This time we can right click in the character's timeline and select Create Behaviour Event from the Context Sensitive menu, which is displayed. And this is our behaviour event. Again, it's coloured orange because it's currently selected in the timeline. We can move that between the tracks of the character. Let's slide that back and forward in time, which allows us to change the timing of this event. Now if we move it all the way to the left of the timeline and ensure that it's beginning at frame 0, then let's drag it out so it ends at about frame 300. Now currently this behaviour event is set to an arms windmill type behaviour. We want to change this to a stagger behaviour so that the character staggers before he falls. So again, ensuring we've got that event selected in the timeline, let's move over to its property view, and in the name field we select from the drop down Stagger 2.0. So now let's simulate and see what we get. So if we play that animation, we can see that the character is given a small push at the beginning of the animation by the force event. He staggers and he falls and tries to catch his fall. Now let's make some small changes to the properties of the force event, which will change completely the motion of the character. So if we select the force event in the timeline, go to the main toolbar and select the rotate tool, let's just change the direction of that force event a little and then simulate again, and you can see we have a completely different motion now. Play that animation. So you can see that by making some small changes to the properties of one event, we get a completely different animation. So let's assume we have an animation we're happy with, and we want to export that animation for use elsewhere in our pipeline. We can do that by selecting the character in the timeline, going to the File menu and selecting Export. Once we've navigated to the location where we want to save this file, we can select from a number of common animation file formats. I'm going to go for FBX6 and name this Stagger and save it out. We're then presented with the export dialog box with a variety of parameters which allow us to change the properties of the export. These are covered in detail in other tutorials, so for now we'll just leave those at the default and click OK. Then the animation is exported for use elsewhere in our pipeline. So you can see how easy it is to create quite complex motions within Endorphin using a few events, and by changing the properties of those events you can change completely the kind of motion that you end up with.